All right, so here I'm going to talk about what happened, what led to me arriving at my opinion that the type that the performer and singer, songwriter, musician, AURORA, how I arrived at the opinion that the type of within the Myers-Briggs temperament indicator system that she would most likely identify with is INFP. Here's what happened. I hadn't heard of her before. I've been under a rock and didn't know about her whatsoever. And an MBTI nerdly friend who I often do these armchair typing exercises with, it's a lot of fun, he said, hey, what do you think of this person? And sent me just that video that I ended up posting in that video, in my video about her, as INFP as it gets, of her talking a little bit about and then performing her song, Warrior. And so what I first did was not watch her video or watch any video footage of her. The first thing I wanted to do was go and look at interviews, written transcripts of interviews for her. And it so happens that I was, without having ever seen her perform or do anything, just based on one magazine article alone, I was completely convinced she's an INFP. Now, I don't usually do that. That's not usually the case, that I feel so confident about a typing opinion based on so little data. But she's just to me, she's just such an obvious classic presentation of INFP that it was just inescapable, and I didn't see a need to go further. But that, just so everybody knows, that's not at all necessarily the case with me. I'm very open to all kinds of information. I do privilege textual data for consideration, but I also have, going through all my filters, all kinds of objective data, and I'm comparing it to past experience and things I've learned and the theory, and there are all these things I'm keeping in mind as I go through it. And I do go through, as I described in my last video about my approaches to armchair typing, I do go through a process of challenging myself and trying to, I start with an assumption and then I try and disprove it. I try and tear it down. I try and see if I can find anything to contradict it. And then if I can, I look into that further. And then, so it goes on like that. It kind of toggles in that kind of investigative point, counterpoint, many counterpoints. Sometimes, my investigation narrows in quite steadily to the conclusion, but sometimes it's shaped another way. Sometimes I'm like, I'm quite sure they're this, but let's take another look. Or someone will intervene and say, well, yeah, but da-da-da-da, and give me some other document to check out and give me their opinion. And then all of a sudden it's opened right back up again. So I change my mind a lot as I go through the process sometimes, and I surprise myself, and I enjoy that. At least as much as it's frustrating, it's very fun for me to have thought one thing and then to see how I could be missing something altogether, and then to factor what I should be factoring in. I enjoy the process. All right. Anyway, though, AURORA, I feel, is just a total slam dunk. Just, beginner level. Like, if you can't get this one, don't, whatever. I don't want to tell anyone, whatever. But I must say that when I heard that there were, people were wondering, what was presented to me was, I'd heard that some people, I don't know who they are, but some people were wondering and discussing amongst themselves if she might be an INFP or an ISFP. So that group of people, I guess, or most of the people in that group had arrived at the idea that, okay, we're definitely dealing with an NF here. And I do think that's really obvious in her case because, and again, I would not let this just go unchallenged or uninvestigated further critically. But it is the case that, if there's a singer, songwriter, performer, so that's someone who's doing a lot of different things. That's obviously a very creative person. Now, next thing, when their work is highly expressive and it's in an emotional sense, where emotionalism pervades everything about that work of art they're making in a really obvious way, again, I would not say that I would not just jump to the conclusion and say case closed, that, oh, it has to be an NF, or even that it has to be a feeler that made the thing. I will say that that is what I will, put through my grinding, my sorting machine, my investigative process. I will start there, however. I will keep my mind open to the possibility this person might be a T. They might be an SJ. Not people that show up in the arts in great numbers, but there are some. And they're all different kinds of people doing all kinds of different things in the world for all different kinds of reasons. So we shouldn't never jump to conclusions or rely on stereotypes at all. Anyway, so I went on the presumption that, okay, yes, I agree with, so far what I gather immediately from just a little picture of her and what I'm reading from this interview, which I'll refer to soon, the Verge article, it is. I'll cite it soon. I'll put a link to it in the description box below. It was pretty easy to see to me that, okay, she is very, very probably, yes, an IFP. So I kind of started with that question in mind. All right, well, how to since I'm like, that seems plausible, so let's say she is, let's say I'm in agreement with that. How would I differentiate between ISFP and INFP? Well, now I'm just going to read you what I wrote to my friend, because you know what, my videos my best work is maybe you won't be surprised to hear this, but my best work is actually in the comments. My best work is in the correspondence with people that I do this with, and because my speaking and my videos are always just me yakking. They're just me sketching in the air and going in circles, like just being messy. Those are my first drafts, and I don't know where I have the gall to just put them up on YouTube, but I I do. But really, my much better work, if you ever want to see it, is in the comments, because then I'm really carefully, it's automatically at least a second or third draft of whatever claim I've made in the video. And so it's more refined, and because I'm writing it, it's much more carefully structured and considered, and yeah. By the way, I feel like the thing that the comments under my videos are very often much more interesting than my videos themselves. So if you like what my videos have, and you have the time and the interest to go further, I suggest you really look at the comments, because my commentators are kick-ass. Yeah, I just no other way to put it. They're really smart cookies, and they have a lot of interesting stuff to say, and they're really committed to the subject and really getting into an interesting discussion and a thoughtful discussion. So it's pretty terrific. Thank you guys for doing that. Thank you, any of you who watch, very much. But I also want to thank those, special thanks to those that will comment. All right, back to Aurora. So here is what I wrote to my friend. So I can pull this up here. So this is regarding specifically differentiating INFP from ISFP. So, said to him, didn't listen to her music yet, but I'm already firmly in the INFP camp of that debate. If there's richness and interest and passion and down-to-earth perspective and even uniqueness, but little to no conceptualism, then I'd lean to ISFP. Brackets. Must keep the originality of Prince and Michael Jackson in mind here, ISFPs, before I jump to too hasty conclusions. But if trying to differentiate between the IFPs, looking for evidence of frequent big picture ideas, that which is the issue of auxiliary NE in the case of INFP, is a legit way to go. Yeah, I totally stand by that. I mean, that really is the differentiator. You can't go on fashion. You can't go on, like, the other ones are just really, they're lame. I don't mean, like they're not substantial at all. To just go on, well, their hair looks like this, or like their voice makes me think of whatever, like that's just nothing. It's just nothing. So I said it's all over the damn place with Aurora. So all I've gone on so far is this article, which is posted below, from The Verge, and it was published in when? in April 22nd, 2016, so last spring. I said she's hardly quoted about anything in the interview, that isn't an extrapolation to a bigger picture view of what she does. What NE does when it's in prominence in a cognitive function stack, and if it's allowed to develop and it's matured at all, what people with that would be the NPs. All 4 of the NPs do a lot of this. And what you're going to see is a lot of association making between phenomena in the objective world, and it's going to be very kind of far-flung and imaginative, and it will predictably make people who don't have any in prominence, who are at all interested in those kinds of associations, it's going to make them say to themselves, like, oh, you know, I never thought of it like that. I never thought of those two things, those phenomena out there in the world, as being related in any way, but now I see what you're saying. That's what NE people do. You know, it's one of the things. All right, so all over the damn place with Aurora. To take just 2 examples, here's one. She says, metal, I love metal sounds. If I have a stick with me, I just drag it across a fence, and all fences make different sounds, just like people when they laugh. Now, all right, just like people when they laugh, that simile, that strikes me as something I would say, that strikes me as a very NE typical kind of thing, observation to make, where you take fences, which is over here, and then you take people laughing, and you make this conceptual connection between all fences sort of are the same, they have the same sort of form, and when you do the same thing with them, drag a stick across them, you know, there's going to be some predictability in the sound, but each one is a little bit different. And then make that conceptual connection that's far afield with people laughing, the way human laughter is produced and how everybody's is a little bit different. That's very NE thing to say. That is not a down-to-earth intelligences thing to say. That's a very NE woo thing to say. Also, that like the kind of whimsy in there. Now this is very secondary. This is not, you know, primary sort of information. But when she says metal, I love metal sounds. Here's another thing that that FI DOMs, the ISFPs and the INFPs will do. There's just so much to say on that, but it's coming up a lot with Aurora in this sort of reference doc. So, and in the 2 reference docs for video, which I'll also post in again with the article. Yeah, the thing is that because they have a judging function in the dominant position, and that judging function is introverted feeling, which is all about a subjective, very emotionally intense, subjective, sort of complex systematic evaluation, okay? So it's evaluation of what they are taking in informationally through what their perceiving function, and E, that's in the case of INFP, that's their auxiliary, and then in SE for the ISFP. What they're doing is the auxiliary function, the perceiving function, is bringing in data for consideration by an evaluation by the judging function, the decision-making function. And what FI will do is it makes value judgments. FI has a kind of strong sense of, you know, the person who has it has a strong sense of themselves quite easily, and they spend a lot of time in life thinking about their values, their value system, and the value system in the sense of that most people understand it, the colloquial sense of what is right and wrong and just and not, and what is beautiful and not. And they also spend a lot of time thinking about, yes, what resonates with me. It's almost like all the people with heavy FI, and I'm one of those too as an ENFP, and so is ESFP. We have FI in the auxiliary position. It's like we have these sort of, I don't know how to describe it, but almost like internal, we know very strongly what we like and what we don't like. And we do tend to approach the world. That's definitely one lens that we kind of can't help but approach absolutely everything with is, do I like this or do I not like this? Does this feel right to me? Does this not feel right to me? Is this, do I have a hunch about this? Do I not? So that's what we mean by value, in part by value judgments. So right here with Aurora in this quote that I just cited, but also all through that article, what you see is, you see her saying, I like this makes me feel. And it's very personally referential, a lot of what she says in even just those two pieces. And about INFP, I'm also going to put in this reference that I have that could be helpful to people who are trying to suss out whether they could be INFP or not. This person's changed their screen name a few times, so I'll please do look in the box below. I do wish to thank them. Maybe I'll tell them that I used it this way. What they've done, they've called it Famous Real Life INFPs, and this person has made a compilation reel of a bunch of famous INFPs. And what do you know? Most of the people that this person's put in there are pop stars that everybody's heard of, or everybody my age has heard of anyway. And what you can notice in looking at all of these musicians talking about various things, what's very striking is they're talking about all different things. It's mostly them being interviewed for television. Well, for television, it definitely is because it's visual. They're being asked about all manner of things related to their work, their careers, whatever, what their opinions are on things. And what you should notice that is very telling, and this is very key to typing correctly for FI dongs, particularly INFPs, is when you see someone who is very frequently saying what they have to tell you is put in terms of I feel, I like, I hate that, I wish, value judgments. That might seem really plain and like, oh come on, it's not that obvious. I'm like, yes it is. Again, I'm not denying there aren't all kinds of other things that should be considered that are much more complicated, but I am saying that that is a big indication. If the person in their verbal expression, be it to a stranger or not, has lots and lots and lots of self-referential value judgments in it, like that's good, that's not even that's good, that's bad, although that could be in there. But I feel, I like, that is compelling evidence if supported by other evidence. That's compelling evidence of major FI. Because someone who might, for example, who would be of more, say an NT, they will be much more predictably, when asked their opinion on something. First of all, they may not offer an opinion. They might not offer a value judgment of any sort unless asked. And then if they do, not that they won't say anything about what they like or dislike, but you will notice a pattern. If you really take a look at the transcript, if you look at the text, which is what you should look at, you will see them saying they will say things in a much more neutral kind of way, a much more objective way, you could say. They'll, which is not necessarily to say, more true, but just that, yeah, it's not personal, it's impersonal. They'll say, I think, not I feel that. They'll say, I think this, or this is this, with some confidence. They just have a more objective view. That's the pattern of their cognition is to veer towards that much more often. Pay much more attention to, again, what's logical, what's rational, what fits, in a logical scheme. All right, I'm going to split this into parts. We'll go on with Aurora in the next video.